So I've been playing Rain.
Rain, it falls from the sky like small suicidal units of water, corroding buildings and statues, but giving life to plants and other dumb hippie bullshit. It's also wet, I guess. Rain.
A game made by Acquire for the PlayStation 3. It's part in a long line of games I like to call Sony using their insane amount of money to fund shit no one gives a fuck about. Games like VIP Ribbon, Cooler World, Journey, and just about everything Team Ico produces. I basically imagine this happening every time.
Oh, Mr. Sony, please help us make our game.
Sure thing, Toots.
Ooh, oh my, all this money.
Yes, I am quite the fellow indeed.
But, Mr. Sony, what if the game doesn't sell well?
It doesn't matter. Some hipster twat will probably write an overly hyped article about it at some point, which is good for our image.
Oh, I get it. You're trying to cover up the fact that you stole the souls of 1,000 Somalian children.
Quiet, my love.
And then they probably end up banging right then and there on Mr. Sony's huge mahogany desk made out of mahogany. But yeah, this is one of those artsy games Sony publishes every once in a while. And considering no one really seems to give a shit, I figured I'd try my hand at actually doing just that. And boy, let me tell you, this motherfucker has plenty of shit to give. The story of Rain follows a young boy who, like all European children, has been locked up in his bedroom for all eternity. But then, on one fateful day, he spots an invisible girl walking through the rain. For a brief second, their eyes meet, at which point the boy goes all like,
"You're beautiful. You're beautiful. It's true."
Until some horrible monster called the Unknown comes along and 9/11's the mood. So the young boy goes on a quest to save the young girl, and he does so by also turning invisible because reasons. Now, Rain is a lot like a survival horror game, but without the survival and the horror. Or kinda like a puzzle platformer without the platforms. So, what you do is solve puzzles, climb objects, and occasionally run away from some monsters or sneak past them using stealth. Quite often, there will be a couple of monsters patrolling each area, a few things to push, and a handful of shit to climb and jump from. Sometimes, however, you'll get chased by the Unknown, cause he's basically Nemesis, and other times you'll have to work together with the girl to reach the end of the stage. One thing that really spices this cocktail up though is the inclusion of the rain itself. Thing is that the boy you play as is only visible when standing in the rain. So him being underneath shelter will make him invisible to the monsters and the Unknown. But having him walk through a muddy puddle or something like that will still make his little pitter-pattering feet stand out like an actual human being at a Tumblr convention. And, well, pretty much the entire game is built around these few very simple concepts. All of which could very well be summed up as light stealthy puzzles and platforming and monsters in rain. Now, most of these artsy-fartsy games tend to take their simple concepts and milk them for all that they're worth. Just about everything that could be done with the simple mechanics that they have will probably be done at some point. But Rain, on the other hand, doesn't really do this. You see, the problem is that Rain is pretty fucking short, and honestly, I'm actually a bit torn as to how exactly I feel about this. I mean, from a story standpoint, I'd say that the length is absolutely perfect. It says what it wants to say, and it doesn't do so in a pretentious, artsy-fartsy kind of way. But it also prevents the game from having enough time to be able to expand on what mechanics they might have. It'll show you that the monsters are distracted by sound or that mud will make you visible, but none of these ideas ever return once they're introduced or really change in any kind of way. Which, to me, feels like a bit of a waste considering how good these mechanics actually are. What I mean is that Rain is the type of game that teaches you through death. So, at one point early on for instance, a monster will start chasing you but the road ends in a dead end. But as he kills you, the scaffolding above you will collapse. Now, if you just so happen to function, you might be able to piece together that luring the monster over there again and stepping out of the way might be a good idea. And because of dying not really setting you back at all, you get to try again right away. This at least made me feel somewhat smart and, perhaps more importantly, like I actually did something myself without anything ever telling me. Which is pretty great, and it makes what gameplay is there a lot of fun to play, as there are plenty of other moments like this. But sadly, the game isn't very challenging at all, because of the fact that these moments never really get expanded upon. I honestly feel like they could have done with just a few more complicated puzzles structured in a similar manner. As I said, the stealthy segments are pretty okay good as is, but it still kept feeling like I was just playing the tutorial stage over and over. It was as if the game was teaching me all of these mechanics, hyping me up for the true test of skill that lied ahead. But the game has a story to tell, and thus it only ends about 3 hours in. Anyway, with this game having a lot of platformy, climby, parkoury bits, the controls are obviously a pretty big deal. And, well, shit ain't perfect. Thing is that the game uses a lot of set camera angles, much like the survival horror games of yore used to do. And while it looks fucking
immaculate,
it does make the jumping of the platforms a bit fiddly to do sometimes. However, more often than not, the game moves slowly enough for this not to be an issue. It's only while being chased by the unknown that shit can get a little bit awkward. Though, in a way, one could also claim that not feeling 100% in control of the situation only adds to the panic of getting chased. Which it certainly does, but part of me also feels like I could have done without the occasional frustration pooping on the calm and soothing atmosphere. That pooping was very occasional though. And as far as games without tank controls but with cinematic camera angles go, this is probably the best controlling one I've ever played. Like I said, I can very well imagine that all of this was done on purpose, and at least I never had those awkward moments I often got in games like Fatal Frame or on the bridge of Final Fantasy X-2. So at least it's not finicky in that sense. Now, while the game is still pretty okay good from a gameplay standpoint, despite the things I just mentioned, a very, very big draw is definitely its atmosphere and the story. I mean, in terms of storytelling, the game isn't very straightforward as it's all about that symbolism. The levels, the monsters, the music, and especially the rain itself all have some kind of deeper meaning. And while I do like my cutscenes cutscene-y and my dialogue-y, it is quite cool to see a game do it almost entirely like this. If there is anything I could compare it to, I'd say it'd have to be Silent Hill 2. That's also a game that goes to near insane lengths of giving meaning to literally everything. Only Silent Hill 2 still used cutscenes and dialogue. And Rain doesn't really do that, which might just make it a bit too obscure and vague for some people. Although, it's not like it's completely incomprehensible or that it requires you to read the game's wiki or anything like that. It is mostly just a story about a boy and a girl trying to get home. And everything that happens around them just so happen to be metaphors for what problems they may be going through. So, we're not exactly dealing with rocket science. Anyway, as far as stupid artsy-fartsy games go, this one is actually pretty fucking good. The game does look a bit PS2-y, but I don't really see how that could possibly be a bad thing. I mean, everything graphics-wise really adds a lot to the visual style overall. Sure, the texture qualities, the camera angles, and the controls do feel a bit like they belong on a PS2, but as it is now, it just works. The chunky textures only complement the misty, moisty, actually not ugly looking, bloomy vibe the game has. And because of this and the excellent story, I wholeheartedly recommend it to anyone who owns a PS3. It's quite the experience despite its flaws and its brevity, and I don't think that I'll ever be forgetting this little gem ever again. Well, that is until I found out that the game was made in Unity, in which case it has no fucking excuse for not being anywhere near as good as the Slaughtering Grounds. Jokes. So funny.